And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers defeat Central Arkansas at home 86-53 in a game where the Hoosiers did not start out very well, giving up 19 points before the first TV timeout, but then went on a huge run, and then did the same thing in the second half, where they gave up 13 points before the first TV timeout, and then went on a huge run and really controlled the action, did a lot of good things, which we will talk about. However, it could end up being a victory that proves costly if Rob Phinisee has to miss any time. That is obviously one of the big storylines coming out of tonight. I don't know if we'll hear anything while we're doing the show about his status, but his head collided with the knee of a Central Arkansas player, and he had to leave the game. So we will all, of course, be awaiting word on that. Really kind of the one issue tonight that kind of marred what was, otherwise a relatively solid performance from Indiana in the game that they should have dominated and that they did dominate. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms, and we're going to break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And let's start tonight's show as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for tonight's banner moment, I'm going to go back to the very end of the first half. Devonte Green had the ball. There were about 15 seconds to go, and he had a little sliver of a driving lane. And for a split second, it looked like he might kind of push it and take an early shot or try and force the action. Instead, he very calmly pulled it out, didn't force it, stayed patient, got himself an open three-point look, and drained it, one of many, I think, 6 threes that he made on the night. And it ended up putting Indiana, I think, up 16 at the half. And it was great to see him make a patient decision like that, and it's something that has really characterized his play over the last few games. I've noticed many spots where freshman Devonte Green, sophomore Devonte Green might have forced the issue, pushed it a little bit, tried to make a play that, maybe there was a sliver of a chance for it to happen, but it would have to be a home run, and instead be a little bit more patient, get some singles, get some doubles. He's been doing that a lot more, and it is leading to much more consistent, solid play over the last few games. Devonte finishes tonight with 19 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, had just 2 turnovers, one, before kind of the end of the game when it was into garbage time. So another really solid performance from Devonte, and I thought that play, that decision that he made there at the end of the first half was really emblematic of kind of the shift in mindset that we're seeing from him, which has been huge for Indiana to add another guard who's playing some solid basketball. So good job by Devonte, and we'll obviously break down his game more as we go through this evening's show. All right, tonight's Hoosier Proud banner moment brought to you, as always, by our friends at Hoosier Proud and Home Field. At homefieldapparel.com, you will find the comfiest and most unique licensed IU apparel, like the Tri-Blend hoodie that I've told you all about, that I bought, that I love. It's awesome. I highly recommend that you look at it. And also at HoosierProud.com, you will find great State of Indiana-themed apparel, as well as our official Assembly Call logo t-shirts. Both brands, Hoosier Proud and Home Field Apparel, were started by an IU grad, and all apparel at both sites is designed and printed out of Indianapolis. And of course, Christmas is coming up. And if you're watching this live, December 19th is the last chance. It's the deadline for being able to ship your goods and get them by Christmas. So if you're listening live right now or on the podcast late at night, you can try and go there and order and hopefully get it by Christmas. If you're listening the day after, I'm not sure if you'll get it by Christmas, but go see if they have an update on the website. Either way, even if you get it a day or two after Christmas, the products are so good. They would still make great presents. So go there, HoosierProud.com, HomefieldApparel.com, and order. And
get some coupons.
Don't forget to use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout for 15% off your order on either site. That's promo code ASSEMBLY at HoosierProud.com and HomefieldApparel.com. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And let's start with Andy Bottoms. Andy, your Bottoms line on tonight's IU victory.
I would say with a game like this, short of the Phinisee injury, it's really everything you would expect. A lot of guys got to have, see playing time. A lot of guys got in the scoring column. And for me, I was really impressed with certainly not the start of either half, but really the response to the start of those halves. I mean, in the first half, I tweeted this out. I was trying to keep track of possessions. I did a better job in the first half than the second. But, at one point in the first half, IU held Central Arkansas scoreless for 15 straight possessions. Now, some of that is them missing shots, but, credit where it's due to the defense. And that really is where the game swung when, sequence after sequence between, media timeouts, IU really dominated and outscored them 24-8 over the remainder of the half after that first media timeout. And then, again came out really sluggish in the second half, really turned it up defensively. I think at one point came close to having 10 straight stops again, and over one stretch outscored them 30-5. I mean, it went from 52 to 40 at the under 16 timeout to, I think by the under 4, it was 82 to 45. So, a couple of really strong sequences, and the only thing to nitpick is just the way that they started those games, and obviously some concern for Rob. But hopefully it was precautionary, certainly in a game where it became obvious you weren't going to need him, particularly with Devonte playing so well. And the good thing for the team is that they've got such a long layoff after this Jacksonville game that hopefully it's adequate time to get him checked out and healthy. But I think, as we've seen with Race Thompson, they're taking any kind of head injury really seriously, as they should, and hope for a speedy recovery with him. But I thought some really, really good stretches of defense tonight were really the story in this game from my perspective.
Absolutely. All right, Ryan, over to you. Your opening thoughts on tonight's IU victory.
Yeah, I know we're all going to talk about basketball, and we're going to break this game down as we go forward, but seeing that shot of Terry Hutchins' seat empty at the IU game really hit me. Hutch, obviously, if you don't know, was in a car accident on Monday night, is in critical condition at the hospital. That latest update I got was he was still in critical condition on Wednesday. He's a guy that, for anybody who's been around the program for the last 20 years or around Indiana in any capacity, Terry Hutchins. And he's one of those guys who's just an insanely hard worker. He's insanely fair as a journalist. He is smart. He's phenomenal at what he does. But I got to know him a little bit when I lived in Indiana and worked in Indiana. When I was on the Indiana Daily Student, he was always great to sports media, always reached out to us, always asked us how we were doing, how school was going, how the writing was going, offered himself up for any tips or anything that he could have done, which was in contrast to a lot of other guys who worked in the area. They just looked at us as we were kids playing a game. We didn't take it seriously. Hutch knew differently. He knew we all loved what we did and wanted to do it professionally. He was just a phenomenal guy, had a really dry sense of humor, really just, funny guy, cool to be around. And every time I've gone back and said hi to him, he's just been as nice as possible, even if he probably doesn't even remember who I am or remember that I met him when I was in college. But I've never heard anyone say a bad word about Hutch. And so thoughts and prayers are obviously with his family and with him, and hoping he can have a full recovery. But, seeing that empty seat that they left open for him really, really hit me hard. So, and this is a season where I know Hutch would love covering this team, and I'm sure he was loving covering this team because it's really fun and these guys are really good. And so here's hoping that he's back and healthy and makes a full recovery and can be back at some point this season and is, can be anywhere at some point this season, but can eventually make a full recovery and be back. So thoughts and prayers out to Hutch and his family, and, just a great guy and a really, really sad story. And I'm sorry I'm bringing the show to a screeching halt, but I think that's on all of our minds today.
No. I'm glad you took your time to say that. He's a legend of the beat, and the thing, as you hear, my experience with him has been exactly that. He's come on the show. He's been incredibly kind and generous, to us, and nobody has anything other than just great things to say about him. So as you said, thoughts and just, prayers and all the best wishes to him to make a recovery from this.
And the way it was headed, he was going to be the Don Fisher of writing about Indiana basketball. He's just going to be one of those guys who was there forever doing it and doing it better than anybody else. So really hope that everything's okay, that he winds up being okay and back on the beat.
Yep. Well, it's always tough to transition out of a topic like that, but I think probably, if Hutch were here on the post-game show with us right now, the first thing he'd want to talk about is Romeo Langford, because I think really, obviously the individual performance of Devonte Green, which I mentioned in the banner morning, we'll get to. But, this was really, kind of a signature performance from Romeo, at least in terms of, what he did statistically and just the all-around game. It's not going to, go down in the annals because of the opponent. But you look at Romeo, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. And I thought he really came out tonight, Andy, and really had a mindset of creating for his teammates, because I think he had 3 of those assists within the first 4, 5, 6 minutes of the game. He had a lot of them early. He looked for his offense a little bit more, toward the end of the half, and then in the second half. And we saw him score in a variety of ways. He hit some jump shots. He had some nice drives to the bucket. Didn't hit any threes, which we'd love to see go down. But, and then, what I thought was impressive, Didn't like that he was in the game at the end. Maybe we can talk about that later. But he hustles after an offensive rebound when some Central Arkansas guys are just standing around, and it would have been easy for him to just take that play off. So, I thought overall we saw so many of the things tonight that make Romeo special, and he gets that double-double with 18 points, 11 rebounds. A lot to like from his game tonight.
Yeah, I think with injuries to this team, everybody's holding their collective breath seeing him on the floor there toward the end. But I thought it was a good showing for him overall. He had some really nice mid-range jump shots coming off of screens. I think you saw at times a little bit more of him getting the ball in the middle of the floor that Archie had talked about. And but I agree with you. He really came out assertive at the beginning, but assertive in a way that was trying to get other guys involved. And you're right. I think he had 3 assists by the first media timeout, although that came like 7 minutes into the game. But at that point, he had 3 assists, ended with 5. But a really strong all around performance. Had a couple blocks I thought played some solid defense during those stretches where IU was really successful defensively, and again just showed that kind of effortless ability to get to the basket that we've become accustomed to in his short time so far at IU. But definitely a good game. And I think at least on the offensive end of things, where there'd been a lot of discussion about how tentative some of the guys were coming out at the beginning of the game, these sluggish starts, I thought offensively that was certainly not a problem. The defensively left a bit to be desired, but IU was really attacking quite a bit in the beginning, trying to really make some passes, thread the needle a little bit too much, getting guys going to the basket. But I thought at least offensively, there was more of a sense of urgency at the beginning of the game than maybe we've seen in some of these other slow starts. Yeah,
Ryan, what did you take away from Romeo's night tonight?
Well, I thought you were going to come on here and rail against him taking long twos and not being efficient. So
no, Romeo can take. Romeo can take those twos because he can make them. I'm still mad at Al Durham for dribbling a half step inside the 3-point line and taking that one long two.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Shouldn't.
But I know. But yeah, Romeo, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and only 1 turnover. I thought that was the key there, was the 1 turnover. He really, for as much passing as he was doing on the interior, and he wasn't just tossing it around the perimeter. He was looking to attack with his passes. And I know that sounds weird, but there's ways guys can attack the defense with passes as opposed to having to only do it off the dribble. And I thought that's what he was doing. And the 3-pointers weren't going. I thought he forced all 3 of them. I didn't think really, I think he's almost thinking like I have to make threes when he really doesn't, because of the way he attacks. And if he gets to the line and makes free throws, he did tonight, he was 4-4. Then it doesn't really matter if he's able to hit threes or not. He just needs to be able to attack. And especially when somebody like Devonte Green, who I'm sure we'll talk about next, is hitting threes, that really doesn't need to be part of Romeo's game. He just needs to attack off the dribble, move the ball, cut, and do what he does. And I think that one of the most impressive things I've seen out of him this year isn't just his confidence going to the hoop and his maturity as a player and his offensive maturity to know that, well, if I want to score, I don't just have to drive it every single time or fire up a shot. I can actually work within the system, get my shots that way. And by getting other people involved, it's going to make life easier for me. He actually realizes that. But what was really impressive to me tonight was how hard he was cutting off of everything. And that was how he got open for a lot of his points. It was just by making nice cuts and getting the ball in the position he wanted to get it into and then driving off of that. So really impressive night from Romeo, as always. I mean, he is who he is, this fantastic player, and we should enjoy every time we get him. I did think it was funny how he had like that the one dunk he had off the inbounds play. It was an angry dunk because he missed a shot the play before, and he got that dunk off the inbounds. Just like, I mean, he's not a super emotional guy, but you could just see he was angry and threw down that 2-handed dunk off that inbounds play, and that was great.
Yeah, it was. Andy, before we break, let's talk real quick about Devonte a little bit more, get your guys' thoughts. The one thing I didn't mention about his game, he had 4 steals, and he had really quick, active hands today, especially on guys driving to the basket, and was able to poke out and get some steals. But he was outstanding tonight, and I thought he was really good against Butler. He's stacking some good performances up now that's starting to give you a little bit more confidence going forward that this guy that we hope to see as a junior, maybe we'll start to see him.
Yeah, I thought he one of the many astute observations from Sean Morris was about a couple times in his defense where he really slid his feet well and cut off drive. And that was one area that IU really at the beginning of the game struggled with. They let some baseline drives get through. It led to some easy baskets, and I thought he did a good job of sealing things off. And I think that's it's funny as you watch these guys who get a little bit into their career, and you're able to harken back a little bit to comments I made before. We've done this a lot with Juwan, his comments about leadership. You kind of see what he's become. Devonte was a guy who came in and said, I want to be the best defender in the Big Ten. And he's shown that ability in flashes. And I thought, so much of what IU wants to do defensively starts with good pressure on the ball. And when he's playing the point so much with Phinisee out, that burden really fell on him. And I thought he did a nice job of that overall during the course of the game.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think, Devonte almost had a quad 5. He had 19 points, 9 rebounds. I thought he rebounded from the get-go really well. He's a guy who's willing to just mix it up with anybody, which I think is kind of a really good trait for this team to have, is just somebody who's not afraid to go in there, and it sort of sets the tone when the shortest guy on the floor is grabbing rebounds in the middle of the paint. Also 6 assists, 4 steals, 1 block, and only 2 turnovers. That's just a really good game. I mean, he was for me, I'm spoiler alert, he's my game ball. I mean, he just was the best player on the floor for Indiana for most of the game. He's not better than Romeo, but he was playing better, and he picked his spots too. He's 6 of 10 from 3. He didn't try and force anything. Sometimes when Devonte gets out of sync, he tries to drive and throw up crazy layups and things like that. He didn't do that tonight. He was more within himself, and the 3-pointers he was taking were off reverses or a dribble up where nobody stepped up to him and he was wide open. That's the game. Those are the games where he plays really well, when he just kind of pulls back on the craziness and just kind of plays solid. And it was a really good performance. I thought it was a really good performance against Butler as well. I think that this is a guy who, and aside from the 4 turnovers in like 4 minutes in the Louisville game, he's been pretty darn good. And this is a guy you're going to need in Big Ten play. You're going to need a guy when the offense is kind of stagnant to make plays. And Devonte Green is a playmaker. He makes things happen. He makes things happen for himself and other people. And that's really important. And if he's doing that without turning it over, without taking bad shots, that's a guy who's really important to this team and can be really effective.
Yep. All righty, coming up here as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's victory over Central Arkansas, I will point out tonight's meaningful moment you might have missed, and then we will go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's victory over Central Arkansas tonight at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. It is time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. One guy that we haven't talked about yet is Justin Smith, who I thought had a very strong first half. He had 10 points. I talked about on the halftime report how seeing he and Devonte really get going offensively, that was one of the things I wanted to see in this game, and you really saw it there in the first half. And Justin, was really active. And the moment that I want to go back to is when he had 2 straight transition buckets in the first half, and it came on the heels of a couple of really questionable transition decisions, I would say, by Indiana. There was one in particular. It was somebody in Deron Davis, and they just they totally mixed it up, and it just didn't look good. And I went to Synergy and looked at the transition numbers. We are currently in the 22nd percentile nationally in terms of points per possession and transition opportunities, which obviously isn't good. The one guy who does have pretty good efficiency numbers in transition is Justin Smith. Now, part of that is because he's never the ball handler. He's a wing, and he's pretty much just finishing, so he's not turning the ball over. But, I thought we saw in the first half Justin get back on offense to doing the things that he does well, which is getting out in transition, being a cutter and getting offensive rebound putbacks, because all 5 of his buckets were layups. And those 2 possessions in particular, he did a great job of getting wide, providing an angle for the pass to come in and finished. One of the passes was from Romeo, and so it was really good to see. In the second half, Justin didn't score, and we saw a couple of times, him get the ball on the wing and try to make a couple of moves dribbling-wise. And, the first time he did it, he traveled, and I wrote in my notes, stop dribbling. And this is something that we've talked about on previous shows, that when he really focuses on, those things he's good at, in transition, and really the things where he can get offensive opportunities without needing to put the ball on the floor, he's been pretty efficient. But when he's been putting the ball on the floor, it's led to a lot of the turnover issues that he's had. So he never really got in the flow in the second half, and that's somewhat understandable given kind of how the half went. But it was nice to see in the first half him kind of get going there. Andy, your thoughts overall on what Justin brought to the table tonight?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about him, really before he had, had these last couple of games where he's played a lot better, about the need to really find ways to get him out in transition. And I thought that was exactly what happened in the first half, that he was doing a good job. And he was also, making some cuts along the baseline, and guys were really finding him, as you said, right by the basket pretty much every time. I think there were some other looks that guys had trying to get him the ball again in the lane, and either he wasn't able to come up with it, the pass wasn't great. So there was a few turnovers came off of those kinds of things. But, while you watch him in the Butler game be able to step out and make a couple of shots, I think by and large over the course of the season, when he's been successful, it's been, due to transition and when the defense was really playing well. So, those kinds of things are always going to be a good sign for him. And again, probably another confidence building performance. If you kind of think about where he was overall, didn't rebound as well. The guards really did a lot of the heavy lifting from a rebounding perspective, but thought he was solid overall, and he only played 21 minutes, which is a little bit surprising, but I think they just were, sequences in the second half. The game's not close. Let him sit a little bit, but I thought overall, solid game. Not necessarily spectacular, but don't really, have a lot to nitpick with how he played.
Yeah. Did anything stand out to you, Ryan, from Justin?
Well, I think part of the reason I think he didn't play much in the second half, they were trying to mix Fitzner in, they were trying to mix Forrester in, they were trying to mix Clifton Moore in. So really that last 10 minutes or so, he didn't really play. And then
he also had a couple of rough possessions defensively too, which might have contributed to it.
And then they brought him in at the end for the last, for a really late stretch there. But yeah, no, I thought this was another confidence building game, as Andy said. I mean, if you look at guys like Justin Smith and Devonte Green, I know early in the season, a lot of Indiana fans being, let's face it, we have kind of an overreactionary fan base, and they said some pretty awful things about these guys. Well, tonight's performance is why you don't throw players away after 10 games or 8 games. You don't pull a scholarship, as I read someone say about Justin Smith a few weeks ago. Like, sorry. But it's these guys get better, and they need to develop, and they need time on the court to develop. And Justin Smith is a sophomore who is really talented. It's going to take some time for him to get to his potential. He wasn't a 5-star step on campus, Romeo Langford, be amazing guy. It's going to take time. It took Juwan Morgan time. It takes all of these guys time to be better. Unless you're getting those guys who are straight to the NBA guys or 2-year guys or whatever. He's a long-term guy, and there's a lot of athleticism and a lot of things that are positive about his game, but a lot of things he needs to smooth out. You're right. Ball handling, certainly an issue for him. But you know what? Having that guy who can run the baseline, catch a pass and lay it in or dunk it or whatever, get out in transition, outrun everybody and make a layup in transition, that's an important role to have. Plus, when you add his length and athleticism to the defensive side of the ball, he's an important guy, and he's an important guy for Indiana, as is Devonte Green, because of what they bring to the table that nobody else does on this team, or, just nobody does at their level. And Devonte Green being able to create offense out of nowhere, that's something this team needs and is going to need at times this year. Justin Smith, having his athleticism defensively, offensively, his ability to rebound, didn't rebound great tonight, but as Andy said, the guards really took care of rebounding tonight. But you look at the last couple games, he's rebounded very well. And again, finishing around the hoop, he has gotten that confidence back. We've seen him kind of step out on the floor and take some shots as well the last couple games. That, again, slowly building that confidence up based on where he was 3 weeks ago and what people were saying and talking about and where he is now. This is a very positive progression. He's building up positive momentum heading into the Big Ten season. That's what you want. And guess what? We've said all year, don't judge this team, don't judge these players until we start Big Ten play in January. Well, we're getting there, and you're starting to see what this team is made of, what these players are made of. Now they just need to make it become more consistent at doing the right things, which hopefully happens. But we'll see. But this is, again, these players need to develop. They need to be on the floor, and they need to get time in the system, time with each other, all of that stuff. And when you have injuries, when you have guys have a slump or whatever, they kind of fall out of, it gets out of whack. And so give these guys time to figure it out.
All right, let's go inside the numbers. Andy, the first couple of numbers jumped out to me. One, Indiana 9 of 24 from 3-point range. probably settled for a few too many. I don't know that we want to be taking that many three-pointers. It's a little out of whack when we're taking 24 three-pointers and only 10 free throws. That's not how we want it, but also this game flow was a little bit strange. So, that kind of explains a little bit of it. But 37.5% from three. Once again, that's pretty close to what our season average is. If we end the season right around there where we've been, I think we would all take that, given where we were. So it was nice to see, yet another game where we saw solid three-point shooting, buoyed obviously big time by Devonte Green, 6 for 10. And the other one, Andy, that stood out is 25 assists on 36 made baskets. And while I thought the spacing at times got a little bit out of whack, for the most part, I thought there was a lot of movement offensively. And you had guys obviously like Romeo and Devonte that we've talked about that were really looking to create for their teammates. Juwan Morgan had 4 assists. So usually when Indiana has a good assist rate, the offense is humming pretty well. And I thought for most of the night we saw that.
Yeah, the assist number was really what was really stuck out, and that was consistent throughout the entire game. I mean, even early in the game, they were trying to make some difficult passes, but they were trying to get the ball to guys cutting to the basket and really trying to attack and make plays off of that. So once they really reined in the turnovers, which they didn't make one for I think the last 13 or 14 minutes of the first half, and then again it was almost another 7 or 8 minutes I think in the second half before they made one. A few of them. Came late in the game to end up with 12. But, overall, I thought that got under control, which was a big deal. And the overall assists and the ball movement I thought was really good. Got him 48 points in the paint, but also shot a good percentage from 3-point range. So decent balance there. I'd agree with you that probably under normal circumstances, you wouldn't necessarily want to take 24 threes, but most of the ones were good looks. Devonte, certainly heated up pretty quickly and did that. And, again, a few of those kind of come late in the game as guys are, just shooting that way. I think guard rebounds, we talked about that a lot with, Romeo with 11, Devonte with 9. That's a pretty big number for those guys. Overall rebounding was pretty solid. Didn't give up, only gave up 4 second chance points, which not what you certainly wouldn't expect to do that a lot against Central Arkansas. I'll leave the free throw number kind of off there. Only shot 10, just made 5. Overall, the assist number was what really stood out to me as I looked it over.
Brian, you love numbers. What stood out to you?
I do. 31.3% from the field for Central Arkansas shooting. That is big. And that's sort of what Indiana's been doing to teams all year. They've been making it hard. And that shows that the defense is there. This is a team that actually shot pretty well from 3 coming in. They shot pretty well from 3 in the game. They shot 39%, which is, if you're Central Arkansas, that's what you want to shoot. 39 to 40% is your target. But Indiana made up for it by making it tough for them on 2s. They only made 11 2s in the entire game. So it was just, and they kept Central Arkansas off the free throw line, 4 of 6 from the free throw line for them. So 2 big numbers. And then the other one for Indiana is they shot 56.3% from the field. And they continue to shoot over 50%. It seems like every game they're shooting over 50% from the field and have a really high percentage on 2s. So I thought offensively and defensively, everything sort of came together tonight. They played really good defense. You're right. That first, you mentioned that first 4 minutes, but
it was pathetic. I mean, it was really bad defense.
It was bad. And then if you look at that, they gave up 19 points in that first timeout stretch. How many did they give up in the rest of the game? Was it 34 points the rest of the game after that? Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. So they really locked in, they focused, and they forced a lot of bad shots from Central Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, if you take out the first stretch, but before the first media timeout of each half, I think IU gave up 32 of the 53 points in those 2 sequences.
Yep.
So 21 points for the other 16 plus the first half really didn't come till about 13 minutes. The 29 minutes of the game is pretty impressive.
All right. So, I mean, that in and of itself is an important number. So what do we think about the way this team is starting? Andy, I mean, obviously they came out and offensively it was better, but it seems like one part of the team is just broken to start a game. I mean, like at Penn State, we don't score a point, so the offense is broken. Tonight, the defense is totally broken. And in an isolated situation, you could say, okay, they just had the big Butler win. They're kind of looking past this game. They started out sluggish, but this is becoming a trend almost every single game. And granted, it hasn't, bit them in the rump because they've been able to come back and they've been able to close. But, they're playing with fire, continuing to start out like this. And so, we talked before, okay, maybe you change up some things offensively and, you attack more with Romeo and Juwan. Well, again, the offense was better. but clearly just mentally they didn't have it to start this game. What can be done about this? How concerned do you think we should be about this?
I mean, at some point, it's certainly becoming a pattern, and it makes you, really makes you wonder what's going on with that. It was funny to see, one of the meaningful moments I thought you might bring up was Archie calling that timeout so early in the second half, where he started to see the same thing happening again and wanted to try to, nip it in the bud. I don't know whether that actually worked, because I think they gave up I think they gave up a score in the next possession, but then maybe after that they really started to, kind of lock things in defensively. But I think he could see it, which, I guess is a good thing in terms of, having a finger on the pulse of the team. But it'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit concerning. This is certainly a hard game to get up for. You've also got, you're coming off of finals, all those kinds of things where this is not the most exciting game. And then I think in the first half proved, you can kind of do whatever you want, score wherever you want, get the ball wherever you want. And maybe that leads to it happening in the second half. And that's why he wanted to, try to put a stop to it early on. But it is certainly a little odd, at least as you start looking at it, that you're really allowing teams that you're much better than to get a little bit of confidence early. That confidence was subsequently ripped away. And, things really went downhill from there. But it's a pattern for sure at this point. I just don't know that there's anything, specific to call out to do it, to do about it. I think he yanked Al pretty early in the game and put Devonte in. He had a couple turnovers earlier. So I think he's trying to, make points to guys who really are off to a slow start. 'Cause I think Al had a couple turnovers and let a guy drive baseline by him on the first, within the first minute of the game, and he got yanked out. So, I think his radar is certainly up to, to watch for guys who aren't off to a good start and then trying to figure out what to do about it from there.
Yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
I think part of it is being warmed up going into the game. Maybe they need to get a little looser getting into the game, because it appears like they're kind of stiff coming out. And maybe that's just in shoot around and warm ups, maybe going a little harder and getting a sweat going. But also I think it's just focus, and it's just being focused right off the get go. And, and the away game at Penn State, that's an away game in a dead arena. Focus is going to be difficult. So you could excuse that. Again, playing these guys, you're going to win, so focus is going to be off a little bit. That's just human nature. But the Butler game, there's no excuse for not having focus there. The Louisville game, no excuse for not having focus there. I mean, there are other opportunities here that they've shown that they're kind of just slow starters. I said this week that I would rather have them be slow starters and good finishers than the other way around. But at the same time, I'd really like to have them start and finish well. That'd be really nice for, my health. But I think that, every team has a wart, and has many warts usually, and this feels like it's one of them. And I'm okay with it if they get better at, instead of having their slow start seep into the first 16 minutes of the game, it's really just the first 4. If they can kind of dial that back and sort of snap back quickly, maybe it's something they can build on and eventually start a game on a nice run. But for now, that just seems to be this team's, a bugaboo for this team. And we'll see. I mean, if you do that when you play on the road in the Big Ten, you get down 10-15 early. That's not easy to come back from. I mean, it's not easy to come back from against a Louisville or a Butler either, and they figured it out. But it's almost like they're playing with fire with starting slow against some of these teams. So eventually it's going to come back to bite them if they keep doing it.
Just like we're going to need your rundown of when it's acceptable to start a basketball game, like what time is acceptable, we're also going to need your rundown of when a team should come out motivated and when it's okay for them to come out and not be focused.
It's never okay to come out unmotivated, but it's just human nature that it happens. I mean, it happens to high school teams where you play a team that you're not that interested in, or you play it at 4 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. I mean, from playing high school sports, from covering high school sports, I could predict before the game started what was going to happen in that game, because it's human nature. And it's just like every single noon Saturday start of college basketball, or Sunday even start, it's always sloppy.
There we are.
It's always sloppy. Like when
drink.
When did you have you seen a great start to a noon game on a Saturday or Sunday? It never happens. It's sloppy. These guys are geared towards playing at night, and you play during the day, and it's ugly. It just is. I don't know what it is psychologically, but the evidence is there. And so, yeah, I don't, just like there should always be 48 hours between games. I'm sorry. You should not play in season. I mean, if you had a tournament or whatever, I don't care. But like when you're in the conference season, you need to have 48 hours between games.
Jamie in the chat has a very important question. When is it okay to sleep through the Monday show?
Who's ever done that, Jerod?
Who's ever done that?
Nobody would ever do that.
All right. On that note, let's go to the next segment. Coming up on the Assembly Call, we continue our breakdown of Indiana's victory over Central Arkansas. We need to talk about Al. We need to talk about Zach. We need to talk about Evan. Still lots to cover here on this edition of the Assembly Call, so stick with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night and Monday afternoon at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 6,000 of your fellow IU fans are subscribed. It will make you a smarter and more well-informed IU fan. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's big victory over Central Arkansas tonight at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. So let's talk real quick, Ryan, about, Coach in the chat mentioned one thing that Archie might consider would be maybe Zach McRoberts back into the starting lineup. We saw Al really struggle tonight. Andy, you mentioned that he got pulled really quickly because of those turnovers. And I thought tonight, Zach offensively, still not really looking for a shot, not able to get much done on the offensive end. But I did think that Indiana's defense looked noticeably better when he was on the court. And I don't know that he's totally back to being Zach McRoberts defensively. Still doesn't look quite as quick as we've seen him, but I thought he looked better. Is that something that you might consider, especially if Al's struggles, who we're going to talk about in a minute, especially if his struggles continue? Ryan?
Oh, that was for me. I'm sorry. I thought that was for Andy. I was responding to something in the chat.
Slept through my comment again.
Yeah, I know, right?
What we're going to need is for you to actually pay attention when you're being asked a question.
Sorry, I was trying to help our fans out with some answers in the chat there.
Don't
I'll
you
be
bring
honest,
them
I
into
wasn't
this.
listening to
How
what
dare
Jerod was saying. Wasn't listening to anything Jerod said there. Look, Zach, it looks like a guy who's had a back injury. And he looks stiffer than usual. My concern isn't his defense. And I know you've been down on his defense a little bit the last couple weeks. I really haven't. I think he's been fine. I think he's been decent. He's not as good,
he's been fine. He's been decent. That's exactly been my point.
Yeah, but you've kind of been like, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure those are the exact words I've used, actually.
I think he's been good. I just don't think he's been at the level he was at last year, but that's natural for a guy coming off an injury. So I don't think we're at where we're going to be at with Zach. My concerns are all offensive with him. He just looks so hesitant. He shot a 3 tonight, and you could tell it was because everybody had been telling him to shoot a 3. Like, he did not step into it confidently. He just kind of hucked it up like he was shot putting it. It didn't look good. And that's definitely in his head offensively. But I just think that he adds a lot when he's on the floor. Now, should he start? No, I don't think so. I think that time has passed. And I think there are other guys who are stepping up that are playing better than him. But to have 2 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and he's a guy who gets on the floor and does things like that. So he's a guy he's the kind of guy you need to have on your team. It's just a question of how much can he play with really offering you nothing offensively. But I think he's a guy you can also bring in if you've got a 5 to 7 point lead and you need to get stops. I think he can help you, and he can at least, even if he can't stop a guy one-on-one, he can be really annoying on the court defensively, because he's a guy who, when you come off a screen hoping to be wide open, you're not going to be. He's going to be right on your hip. And he's just very good at finding his way through screens and playing defense the right way and getting to where he needs to get on the floor, regardless of what kind of action they're running against him. So he's a guy who I think he's going to get better. I think he's going to warm into this season. It really, I think people are really underestimating the timing of the injuries for Devonte and Zach and what they did, because, you kind of build to the season, and they were kind of building in practice to being ready and being 100% at the beginning of the season and being, in game shape and all that stuff. And then boom, right when the season starts, essentially, they lose both of them. And they essentially had to restart that process of getting game ready because they were out for a couple games. And so it's really taken some time. And it's also been in games, they've been trying to work them back in games that Indiana needed to win. So they weren't going to just throw them out there if they weren't ready, because Indiana needed to win some of these games and sort of put them in the bank early. So I think that's part of it. They really had to ease them back in instead of really giving them a lot of run early. So yeah, I think that he's gonna warm up to his situation, just like I think Devonte is starting to.
But I wanted to note, someone in the chat mentioned that Zach is shooting less than he ever really has, and the numbers do back that up. His shot percentage is 4.4% right now, which is last year it was 7.3%. So he's never been a guy who's shot a lot, but it's kind of what the eye test, what we've all kind of seen. The numbers certainly back it up, and he's just not looking at the basket at all, and that, like you said, makes him an offensive liability. Andy, your thoughts on Zach, and then also some of the struggles that we've seen from Al.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have too much to add on McRoberts. I just felt like he wasn't, he had the one nice drive where he kicked it out to Devonte, and I thought that was, interesting to see him really try to put the ball on the floor in a scenario like that, because it's not really something you expect from him. So I thought that was good, but in general, I thought he was more active on the defensive end and was certainly a part of some of those, long defensive, stands that IU had. But overall, just got to get him to look at the basket. And I think when you start, trying to figure out lineup combinations, I think there's just certain guys that you're really going to struggle to find opportunities to play him with. I think, to a certain extent, Al might be one of those guys. I thought it was kind of a mixed bag from him. I mean, he ends up with 9 points, but took him 8 shots to do. It was just 1 of 4 from 3. I thought was pretty effective when he was going to the basket. And at times really, if you want to nitpick the 24 threes, does he need to shoot 4? I don't know. But I thought he was okay, but it was definitely, 3 turnovers. I think that was the, highest on the team. He had those 2 within the first couple minutes. So, that was a struggle. And I think it wasn't necessarily, as you guys have kind of, brought up, even listening to the show after the Butler game, like you're starting to see patterns of certain matchups that he, may not be best for him. I didn't necessarily think tonight fit one of those that he would struggle with, but I thought, again, I think if the more he can attack the basket, the better. His 3-point shot is better, but I still don't know that it's a point where, he's a guy you want taking, 4 per game, especially when Devonte was shooting as well as he did tonight. But I think it's, I just think from a lineup flexibility standpoint, I just don't know that you can play him and Zach together. And so you start to kind of hamstring yourself a little bit when you're trying to figure out what combinations you can use. And, tonight was a game to experiment with a few of those kinds of things. But, overall, I also think in addition to the matchup, I also think it's important to, kind of know who he's on the floor with and how well they can complement what he does bring to the table.
I feel kind of like it has felt like Justin Smith has really been struggling to kind of get comfortable offensively and find his rhythm, find his role. I feel like kind of the same thing with Al. Because you're right, Andy. Like we've talked about some of these matchups that he struggled with. Tonight wasn't that, but he comes out, has those 2 turnovers. Someone asked me on Twitter, like, why is Al making these lazy passes? Like, it's not lazy passes, but they are at times awkward. Like they feel like a guy who just doesn't quite feel comfortable in the offense. And like there was one time, Juwan kind of cut and he threw this like weird, awkward pass. It was almost like he was just trying to get rid of the ball, but it was a second or two, too early. Didn't let Juwan finish his cut so he could get him the ball in a place where he could do something with it. And so, Al, what we saw from him last year is when he's going downhill, attacking the basket, kind of playing by instinct, not thinking, shooting it with either hand. Like he can be really good when he's just a jump shooter and then overthinking things. It feels like it takes him out of his rhythm offensively. And so it feels to me like he just hasn't quite gotten comfortable yet. And part of that is playing with Romeo, because if someone's going to be driving to the basket, it's going to be Romeo. And I just feel like Al, to me, hasn't quite gotten comfortable in a role where he's supposed to be a little bit more of a floor spacer, because that was never really his role coming in. So I like other guys have, I think he's just still learning how to adjust to that. And the last few games have been rough for him. So hopefully that's something that he can, kind of get comfortable with and snap out of here as we move forward. Because he's, Indiana doesn't have enough guard depth to not, to have, like we said earlier, one of its guards just not giving them anything. Ryan, what did you think about Evan Fitzner tonight? He actually led the team in plus minus at 31. Had 5 points, had 4 boards. It was this is the kind of matchup that he's going to be pretty successful in. So I don't know that we really learned anything, but it was nice to see him get out there and, do some positive things offensively.
Yeah, and I thought he actually probably could have fired some more threes. He certainly had a couple opportunities, and it looked like I think Archie sort of wanted them to run the offense, and there were a couple times early in the offense he looked like he could pop, but I think it would have been one of those things where if he popped it early in the offense, Archie and missed, Archie might have yanked him off the floor. So he kind of, moved the ball around, and yeah, he was fine. He was what he was. He's not going to light up the scoreboard in Big Ten play, but he is going to be able to do some things with his length. I think 4 rebounds, and it looked like he could have probably had a couple more, but he really needs to get better at grabbing the ball. He also had an assist on a really nice pass on the inside, but he's a guy who, when he gets open looks in Big Ten play, he's going to have to hit them. And the reason why is because that's sort of why they brought him in. It was to stretch the floor because they don't have a ton of guys who can do that. And so when he does get those looks, when they're not playing Central Arkansas, he needs to not only take them, he needs to make them. And he also needs to not pump fake, take one dribble in and make them. He needs to do what he was doing earlier in the year, pump fake, pull back and shoot the 3, as opposed to a long 2, which I know drives you nuts.
I just want to give a quick shout out to the YouTube user in the chat named Bear's Mouth.
Sometimes you are just walking into a bear's mouth.
Hat tip to that guy because that's awesome. Andy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought Ryan touched on a couple of things that stood out to me. One, he seemed more reluctant than he has over the beginning part of the year to pull the trigger, which
was weird because
he is a little concerning.
Well, he seemed reluctant, but he actually seemed more comfortable in the game. To me, just reluctant to pull the trigger on the 3, which was weird. It was a weird combination.
Yeah, I thought that was odd, and then I definitely noticed the rebounding. I mean, there was a lot of times that he just couldn't grab the ball, and you start to think about the physicality of most of the guys you're going to run up against in the Big Ten. Like that's a little concerning. But I thought it was a decent performance from him. He tried to go inside a couple times. Wasn't just a guy that was stationed on the 3-point line. And I thought he, along with most of the big guys that IU had, really struggled defensively with some of the, kind of pick and pop stuff that they were really trying to run. I forget the name of the big guy that hit a few threes for Central Arkansas, but they really struggled to kind of recover to him and gave up some threes that way. Or if he wasn't the guy that hit the 3, kind of put everybody else in rotation, and the guy on the other side comes to try to help, and then his man hits the 3. So I thought there were some struggles defensively, but he's got to be confident when he goes in, because if he's not, it's a concern of what he's really going to give you, because you're really counting on him to do a handful of things. And if he doesn't look confident in doing those things, then that starts to become a little bit of a red flag. But, again, it's early, but I think he's, kind of had an up and down. If you look over the course of his career, that's kind of been up and down. And I think we've kind of seen that over the first part of his, his IU tenure as well.
He might be a guy who just needs to bat balls out on the rebounds, just knock him out from underneath instead of trying to grab him, because he's really not good at grabbing rebounds. So that might be his thing, to do the Tyson Chandler thing and just hammer rebounds out towards the perimeter and hope one of your guys, hopefully in the direction of one of your guys, because you don't want those guys getting rebounds. You don't want your opponents getting rebounds under the hoop. So if you're just volleyballing them, maybe that's better. I don't know, but you're right, Andy. He just has really struggles grabbing rebounds.
Anything notable to talk about with Juwan's performance? 10 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, had a steal and a block. I didn't particularly feel like he was, all in on this game. Kind of like
he earned a night off.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like earlier in the season against Chicago State and Montana State a little bit. It just kind of looked like he kind of eased his way into this game and, was not going all out. But
Central Arkansas, please don't insult.
I know. He's an old man. He's picking his spots.
I know, seriously.
We haven't even mentioned his name, and we're 3 segments in here. I'm not sure if there's a lot to say.
He looked like it's a guy who was carrying a piano on his back for 3 hours on Saturday. I mean, this was a good chance to get everybody else involved. Quite frankly, what Juwan Morgan can do.
Yeah.
He wasn't. He took 1 3 and it was kind of a step back, kind of leaning back 3. I mean, they didn't need to throw it down to him in the post and have him go to work. Plus, they had a decent shot blocker down there. Like, get everybody else involved, move the ball around. Yeah. You can just toss it into Juwan and he can score on the block whenever he wants. Let's see what else these guys can do. And I think that was just sort of the idea for the game tonight.
Yeah,
so Andy, this is a game.
The play that epitomized that in the first half was that he could score wherever he wanted. Was they dumped it into him, and he basically just bullied that guy and like threw him into the stanchion and scored.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that was kind of like a look. If you want me to do this, I will, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
What did he have in the second half? I mean, he had 4 points in the second half. I mean, it just.
Yeah, he had that one great sequence with Romeo where he got the oop from Romeo and then got the assist to Romeo on the next play. So that was.
But he only played 21 minutes. I mean, they weren't going to put him back in the game. This was Hey, old man, cool your heels, buddy.
Do you have an issue at all with Romeo being out there with 2.5 minutes to go? Like, I understand why they wanted to keep a competent ball handler out there because you've got Clifton, you got Jake, you got Demese. You're not going to really learn anything about those guys unless you have some competent ball handlers. So I get why they were kind of rotating Romeo, Al, and Devonte around. But with 2.5 minutes left. Personally, I would have liked to see Romeo just sit the rest of that one out.
Well, the other thing is that with Phinisee out, it kind of shortens who can handle the ball. And so I think that you kind of had to. And they were rotating them. Though it wasn't like, Romeo was out there for the full final 6 minutes. I mean, he was kind of trying to chop the minutes up. And then with about 2 minutes left, he just emptied the bench. But roughly 2 minutes left, he emptied the bench. But yeah, I mean, I get why he had to do it though. I don't want to see, if Juwan was out there, okay, we got a problem. But Romeo is a freshman who can handle the ball. He hasn't earned maybe he hasn't earned the LeBron James treatment with 7 minutes left or 10 minutes left. You get to just sit the rest of the game. So, but yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with Rob because even though Rob's a starter, I think Rob would have been out there late too with those guys because he's got to get some chemistry with the younger guys that he hasn't played with much just in case something happens later this year. So like there's a situation where they all have to be on the floor. But yeah, I mean, I think it really came down to just, the facts on the ground that they were missing ball handlers and they needed somebody to bring the ball up.
Should we talk about why Jake Forster should play more after he scored 8 points in limited action today? Should we get to that, or do we not? Are we not going to run? Not going to do that?
No. We'll get to that next. We'll cover those guys next. I do. By the way, I want to give some props to the folks in the chat mob who are applauding Juwan for getting some rest, saying that he needed to take it easy. From a fan base that typically wants players to go all out, all 40 minutes, and any sign of any kind of lackadaisicalness will draw the ire. I'm proud of our chat tonight because I think everybody's response to Juwan is exactly what it should be.
I think some people would not be able to get away with it, but I think he's earned the right to.
They should have let Juwan after like the first 4 minutes of the half. Just let him go into Cook Hall, sit in the jacuzzi, light up a cigar, just chill,
or just pull the jacuzzi out, kind of on the sideline.
Yeah,
and just
usually they have a bike they can use on the side. No, just put a jacuzzi out there for Juwan.
Let him jacuzzi and a cigar, and just
put Deron Davis in there as well. You guys just relax.
Oh, that's great. All right, coming up in our final segment, we'll hand out our game ball. Well, Andy and I will, because Ryan already killed the suspense for his. We'll hit any other storylines we haven't hit, like Clifton, Demese, and Jake, and then in last call, we'll deliver our final thoughts. That's next on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms, and we are wrapping up our breakdown of Indiana's victory over Central Arkansas. And this is the time in the show when we always hand out our game balls. So coming into tonight, Juwan had earned 4, Romeo had earned 4, Deron had 2, and Rob Phinisee had 1. So let's see where we're going with tonight's game balls. Ryan, you've already given yours up. You are giving your game ball to Devonte.
Yeah, I honestly don't even think it's close. I think Romeo had a great game, but Devonte was the guy.
See, look, here's the thing.
He played a full game more than Romeo did, I thought. He played all 40 minutes. I thought Romeo struggled in the first half.
But to say it's not close, then Romeo played. I'm just saying, let's be careful that we don't take for granted what Romeo brings to the table because he was outstanding tonight. Andy, who's your game ball choice? You're muted, Andy.
Fair enough. I would really love to engage in some kind of debate with Ryan, just manufactured debate, but I have to go with Devonte. I thought, especially with Phinisee, going down, to really be able to step in and have to, kind of assume, the point guard role, but also, did a really good job of scoring. Did a pretty good job taking care of the basketball. I think, as you mentioned, one of the turnovers really came late. that he had. So, almost a double-double, had 6 assists and hit 6 threes. I just thought he played really well. The 4 steals, as you mentioned, I just thought he brought it on both ends and seemed to be the between him and Romeo. I'll definitely lean toward him.
If I had the deciding vote, I would give it to Devonte. I mean, he got my banner moment. He was awesome tonight. But I'm going to give my vote to Romeo, just kind of a dissenting vote, just because, look, again, I don't want us to take for granted all the great things he brings to the table. And Romeo was terrific tonight. And what I really liked from him, as we mentioned before, early in the game, he was aggressive, but he was aggressive to get his teammates involved. And I thought that kind of harkened back to what he did the first few games of the season. In recent games, he hasn't really even been aggressive at all, looking for his own shot or helping to get his teammates involved. And I liked seeing that again from him tonight. So maybe he doesn't need to come out and look for his own shot to get the offense going. But if he's coming out being aggressive and looking to get other guys involved, I think that can really help the offense. So my vote for Romeo, but I think Devonte a very deserving recipient of tonight's game ball. So let's talk real quick about some of the guys who got in there at the end of the game, Andy. We saw Jake Forrester. He had 6 points in a row, I think, at one point. Clifton Moore was out there. Demezy Anderson got out there. I thought, not a lot really from Demezy and Clifton. They were, active. I mean, Clifton did have 5 rebounds. So, what did you see from those guys? And did you see anything that suggests that they should be getting more playing time in closer, tighter games against better competition?
I just don't really even know how you would translate anything from this game at the point in which they entered it to be able to make any conclusion on that. I mean, I think
God bless you, Andy.
I think true. That being said, I think they should both start the next game. No, I think that I think they're both kind of like activity, big guys where, if they can come out and be it's basically what Clifton Moore did against Penn State, right? He just came out there, was really active. Some of it was good, some of it not, but was overall just really active. And I thought, both Jake and Clifton kind of fit that bill as, kind of energy, big guys, coming off the bench, which I think is really all anybody thought they would be coming into the season anyway. And so, to be able to do that in this game, I don't know that it says a whole lot, but it's certainly a good experience for them. Archie had talked about wanting to get some of these guys in the game in those situations. So, certainly nothing negative necessarily, but I just think they're athletically, even as guys toward the end of the bench from IU's perspective, they're, pretty far superior and just kind of use that to, really, create some havoc around the basket. Demezy, I thought just kind of hunted shots a little bit while he was out there, but, as a guy who's a shooter and hadn't played in a while, I guess maybe that's not super surprising, but that was kind of what I took away from his performance more than anything.
Yeah, no, and you're totally right. It's hard to really take anything from the kind of minutes that they were getting out there. Ryan, did you see anything from any of those 3 guys that's worth noting?
I'll say I really liked how active they were in a game that was a blowout. Sometimes guys just look for dunks and they look for whatever, but Jake wanted to score and when he got the ball, but he wasn't, looking for ridiculous shots. He was getting into good position and finishing, and that's positive. I mean, it's nice to see those guys get in and look like they have a plan. And Jake looked like he had a plan on offense. He was going to catch the ball, he was going to make a post move, and he was going to score. Clifton still not looking great with his offensive sort of arsenal, but he had a nice finish on that shot that he banked, and then he also did a really nice job grabbing rebounds. So I thought that both of those were positives to see. But yeah, of course, you're not going to really determine much from this game.
Zach Osterman tweeted, Archie Miller says Rob Phinisee is in concussion protocol. So that's what we all feared after the hit that he took to his head. You don't really know what that means. I mean, some guys recover quickly from concussions. Race Thompson has been out for now over a month, I think, with a concussion. So we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, Andy, we saw what happens when you have a guard or two out earlier in the season. That is a spot on the floor where Indiana is just thin. And, in addition to the depth, Rob has just been such a rock so far for this team this year, even as a freshman. So there's no real use speculating too long on what it means if he's out, blah, blah, blah. We have Assembly Call Radio that we can talk about that if we hear any more news about it. We'll have Assembly Call Radio tomorrow night. But obviously, any time that he misses is going to be bad. But I will say, at least in terms of the timing, hopefully Indiana could get by Jacksonville without him, and then there's a nice long break after that where he, will be able to recover from this. So we'll just have to see what the long-term prognosis is.
Yeah, the Illinois game is 2 weeks from tomorrow, from Thursday. So if you think about the next, meaningful game, it would probably be that. So I guess if there's ever a good time to have something like that, I guess this would be it. And, it's hard for anyone to speculate on what that really means. Certainly there are different tests that they'll, kind of give him and see and, assess the severity of what's going on and how he responds and go from there. But, kind of like I said at the beginning, I think the way they've handled Race Thompson, certainly shows that they take this kind of stuff seriously and they're not going to rush anybody back. And so hopefully it turns out to be, relatively minor to the extent that head injuries can be minor and he's able to get back out there. But I do think from a timing perspective, it's not certainly not the worst compared to, when it could be.
Yep. So we will have Assembly Call Radio tomorrow night, and then obviously a post-game show after IU Jacksonville. Andy, do you want to say a word or two about Jacksonville? Is there anything? I think are they sub 300 or are they hovering right around there?
I think they're right around there. I believe they're playing Notre Dame either tonight or it might actually be tomorrow. So, they really have done not too much of note, have beaten the best wins are over South Alabama and Presbyterian so far over the course of the season. And they lost to some pretty bad teams as well. They have won coming into this. They lost their first 4. They've won 7 of 8 since then. But, numbers wise, their offense ranks outside the top 300 in adjusted efficiency and the defense is outside the top 200. So really struggled to limit offensive rebounds. So if IU does miss shots, kind of look for that to be an area where they can take advantage. I assume that has a lot to do with a lack of size on their team, which it certainly appears to be, as really only one guy over 6'6" appears to be playing any kind of appreciable minutes. So, I think certainly a pretty big height advantage for IU and just need to, another one, try to take care of business and hopefully nobody gets hurt this time around, but they do play at Notre Dame on Thursday. So a somewhat quick turnaround to come down to Bloomington 2 days after that.
By the way, Indiana jumped up a couple of spots in KenPom after tonight's victory, now ranked 22nd, so that matches their ranking in the AP poll. Offensive efficiency is at 37th in the country, defensive efficiency up to 18th. So despite the struggles at the start of the first half and the start of the second half, overall the numbers were good enough to move the defensive efficiency up a little bit there. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off of your entire order at HoosierProud.com and HomefieldApparel.com. So if you want officially licensed IU gear, go to HomefieldApparel.com. And if you want one of our Assembly Call logo t-shirts or one of Hoosier Proud's unique Indiana-inspired designs, visit HoosierProud.com. And on both sides, use the promo code Assembly at checkout for 15% off your entire order. All right, gentlemen, it is time for last call. Final thoughts on tonight's victory over Central Arkansas. Ryan, hit leadoff.
Just a good win. I mean, to come out and win by 33 and get some other guys involved and the way that they held Central Arkansas defensively to just 31.3% was the big thing for me. I thought they really clamped down after that pretty poor first opening stretch. And it was nice just to see some other guys get involved. Nice to see Devonte kind of have a nice game. Nice to see Justin Smith have a good first half. And nice to see a night where Juwan Morgan could put it in cruise control and let the other guys win the game after he did pretty much everything for them on Saturday. So really a solid win for Indiana. This is how these games should look against these teams. And, there's really no complaints here. They were balanced. They scored 43 points in both halves and, probably could have hung 100 if they really wanted to, but they didn't. They wanted to get some other guys involved. So I just thought it was a solid win. And this is what a program like Indiana should be doing to a team like Central Arkansas.
Andy, last call.
Yeah, I think when you look at games like this on the schedule, you really try to figure out what the actual best case scenario of those games is. And from my perspective, it's being able to get guys playing time and confidence that may not have been able to build it up over the other part of the season. Because we've all, we kind of just got through a mini gauntlet, if you will, of some of those games. But pretty soon we're going to switch our attention to talking about the beginning of the Big Ten schedule, which is, as bad, if not worse than the one that, kind of just finished up in the early part of December. And so to see a guy like Devonte really play well, to see Justin put another decent performance up there, I think bodes well. And ultimately, to me, when you look at games like this, those are the kinds of things you want to get out of it. you're able to work on some things and play well. And, again, to kind of go back to the defense, I looked a little bit through the second half to try to look at possession. So first half, there was a stretch where Central Arkansas went scoreless for 15 possessions. In the second half, there was a stretch of 13 straight possessions and 17 out of 18, an 18 possession stretch where they scored 1 point. So again, some of that's a talent disparity, but certainly you can't attribute everything to that. So I do think, with the exception of those two, rough patches to start each half, IU was really solid defensively and did some good things there. And that continues to be a calling card. And I think you saw some additional positive signs offensively with guys like Devonte, shooting as well as he did, and continuing to really attack the basket and the ball movement that led to those assist numbers. So again, I think minus the Phinisee injury, it's really the only thing that takes the shine off of what was a game that you really got exactly what you wanted to out of it. So hopefully, quick recovery for him, and he's able to be ready when the Big Ten season resumes, and everybody can get by without him on Saturday.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, despite the rough starts to each half, a lot to like. Indiana took care of business. I saw Mike Pegram tweet. Archie Miller says Rob Phinisee is in concussion protocol, and he's moving forward, expecting to be without him for a while. So I don't know that I would read too much into that. I mean, it's a concussion, so Archie tends to be kind of a conservative coach. So I'm sure if he knows that that Rob's going to be out for a little while, he's going to prepare like that. So, like we said, hopefully the time off is good. Gets him an opportunity to get well before Illinois, because obviously, when that gauntlet hits come January, we're going to need a guy like Rob Phinisee. But solid play tonight from Devonte Green. Nice to see the guys come back after the big emotional win against Butler, take care of business, and now hopefully they can do the same on Saturday against Jacksonville and then go enjoy some time off and get ready for Big Ten play. All right, that'll do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you Thursday night and then Saturday after IU Jacksonville. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
And cut. Scene. How's that UCLA game going?
Well, if you're a UC fan.
Yeah, UCLA just hit a 3 going to half. Banked it. It was weird. It was like a side 3, but he banked it in. It was like a corner 3 as he's fading this way and banked it in off the glass. So, totally planned. But it was 48-28. It's 48-31 at the half. UCLA was up 6 in this game at one point, like midway through the half, and then Cincinnati just hammered them.
Yeah, you've got to be some kind of bad defensively to give up 48 points to Cincinnati and a half this year.
Ryan, serious question for you. Hypothetically, if Steve Alford was still willing to come to IU, would you take him as your coach?
You couldn't pay me $1 million. Me $1 million to have to watch him coach Indiana.
Seriously, if someone said, I'll give you $1 million, but Steve Alford's going to be the coach for Indiana, you would turn that down?
How long is he the coach?
I was going to make
you got to turn around and give the $1 million back to pay his buyout.
Yeah, is it like 10 years?
Otherwise,
there's no way I would accept $1 million. I would accept. It would take way more. If it's like a season, maybe $1 million. $1 million is nice. I mean, cost of living out here sucks. So, yeah. But no, I absolutely not. I don't want him anywhere near my program. That was that way when I was in college, because so I've been through like 4 IU coaching changes. I mean, as we all have basically, but you guys have been through one more than me. But when I was there and he was leaving, or Davis was leaving, Steve Alford was rumored, and we played Iowa, and in the Iowa game, Mike Davis was sick, and
that was the game that Davis didn't come to. I remember.
Yes, and after the game, they kept asking Alford about the IU job. They're like, and he kept repeating it. He kept saying like my entire focus and energy is on Iowa making the NCAA or competing, whatever. And so you only get the opposing coach for like 6 questions or something like that. And so they asked him twice, and everybody, like all the actual reporters, because they were shouting it out, like not the, hey, you're first, you're second, whatever. The people are shouting it out. and he answered it twice, and then he got to 2 basketball questions, and then some dude in the back who was one of the TV guys screams out, "So if the IU job became available," and he said, "My entire focus," he gave the same answer 3 times, and everybody turned and they said, "That's it, we're done, no more questions." And everybody turned and wanted to beat the crap out of the TV guy in the back. We had like beat writers who were trying to write a game story, and these guys asked the same question 3 times, and you only get 5 questions. And it was just like guys. I've never seen a press area devolve into an almost brawl before, and that was before Mike Davis or I forget who subbed for him that day. I can't remember if it was Donnie Marsh or
probably Treelor, wasn't it?
Well, it was Donnie Marsh or Carrie Rupp, one of the two, subbed for him, and I don't remember which one it was. But then they didn't even come in, and I swear some of the IU beat guys wanted to just take the camera the guy had and just smash him with it. But yeah, so it was then. That was 1. 2 was when Kelvin Sampson left, and people were kind of talked about Alford, but not really. Like that was kind of he wasn't, he hadn't been successful or whatever, really. And so people were kind of like, nah, that's fine. So, but then when Crean retired again, Crean got fired again, it was just, why would anybody want that guy to be the head coach at Indiana? I don't understand. Who thinks that's a good idea? Legitimately. There are people out there, and I don't know who they are or if they've ever actually watched basketball, but no.
Indianapolis's #1 radio host, Dan Dockich.
It's true.
That guy's a big fan of the shows. You guys know that?
That's what I hear.
No.
That's what I hear.
No. So, yeah, I just, yeah, I don't get it. I don't get the fascination with him. And it's just the old night guard who's like, we need our guys and we need, this, whatever. And it's like, why? You need the best guy out there. And Alford is not the best guy out there. Saying, well, he's the best IU guy out there. That's not saying much. IU does not have a ton of successful coaches out there. So you're really, USC does the same thing too. They're like, we need a guy who understands USC. No, you get a guy who's going to create his own legacy at USC. That's what you do. And you do that at Indiana too. I don't understand this.
What should we talk about tomorrow night? AC radio. Should we think of a big picture topic to discuss?
Maybe a look at
we don't want to rehash this game anymore.
Sort of where we are, I guess.
In-depth Jacksonville preview probably is the way.
Sure. That's
4 segments of Jacksonville preview.
I want to hammer the shit out of that and then just move on from there.
Break down the advanced stats of Jake Forrester, Clifton Moore, and Demezy Anderson's performance tonight. Really dig into what the metrics say. Yeah,
we each take one and make the case for why they should be playing 20 minutes a game. That'd be great.
I don't know. I mean, what are the big topics out there? How's the rest of the Big Ten looking? I think that's a good one.
Yeah, Jeff said to look at the Big Ten schedule, so we could look ahead to the Big Ten schedule. We can break that down. Yeah, because
we probably looked at that before, but now that you know a little bit more about what some of the teams are, yeah.
Yeah. Jason Kennedy says, "Wait, Steve Alford stuff again?" I teed it up for Ryan.
Yeah, I didn't. It's not like I just came at that out of nowhere, but
no, but you do have predictable responses to certain prompts.
Duh. I don't understand. Yeah, you're surprised by that? It's
nobody said they were surprised.
There's some people in my mentions whenever there's a bad game or Archie does something questionable that they don't like. They're just like, God, we should have hired Alford. I'm like, what?
They're really?
Yes.
Are they just trolling you?
I don't know. They say well, he recruits like crazy. It's like, well, he's recruiting to UCLA. Of course he recruits like crazy.
Well, we're not having an issue with recruiting right
now.
No,
but they just well, he recruits and he's a guy. He's a guy who went to IU and all this stuff. It's like, it drives me nuts. It really does. That's one of the things where I'm just like, have you ever paid attention to basketball in your life?
By the way, if anybody wants someone from the Bob Knight coaching tree, go get Chris Beard, because that guy he's doing some
How about
work
we
at
just
Texas
don't
Tech, man.
get a guy from the IU coaching tree and we just actually hire the best coach available regardless of where he's from?
Well, we did, and he's going to be here for 20 years. So
exactly.
We're wasting our time in this conversation.
No, I mean, exactly. I just don't understand that mindset because, every fan base to some degree has it. They really do. They're like, no, we should hire a guy who knows the culture. It's like, well, if you're losing and you're losing your coach, then your culture sucks. Go get better culture. Import it from somewhere else.
Yes.
I'm sure you guys were excited to see that Roy Williams got an 8-year contract extension.
Yes.
I didn't realize how old he was.
How old is he?
66.
Wow.
He's going to be 74 when that contract is up.
There's a lot. I mean, there are so many that's that's one of the reasons why I think IU basketball is really positioned well for the future. I mean, because you think about all the old coaches that they're going to be gone within the next 5 or 10 years,
especially at big programs too.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've positioned yourself with one of the great young coaches to hopefully be around for a while, which I think there's a chance that we have, that's a good spot to be in.
And what's interesting too is that had Pitino not gone all Rick Pitino at Louisville, there'd be even more. I mean, because he wasn't going anywhere, and Calipari, while he's not old, is not a spring chicken. He's going to be around for a while, but they don't have a succession plan in place. I mean, I think Duke. I think Kay has made it pretty clear Wojo's going to take over for him when he's done. But notice how the school that Wojo picked was a small private school with a great academic reputation, but that spent a lot of money on basketball and didn't really have like a football program to overshadow it.
Look, he's training for the future.
Exactly. No, it's very on the nose. But I mean, like, a school like Notre Dame, Mike Bray is a really good coach, and he's going to be there for maybe another 10 years if he doesn't screw up, but he's not young and dynamic. Michigan kind of has an older guy as a head coach. Syracuse, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky. There's definitely a Michigan State. There's just an old guard. You're right, and they're guys who've been there forever. And
Syracuse is just going to have a cardboard cutout of Jim Boeheim
pretty much
on the sidelines.
No, he's just going to be his corpse, and they're just going to shock it every 30 minutes. Just move a little and be like, no, see, there's our coach.
Ryan predicting a weekend at Bernie's scenario on the Syracuse bench is.
Would anybody notice?
I did not see that. I did not see that happening.
Would anybody notice? They're doing the same thing with Coach K, except for he couldn't argue with officials, and that's half his appeal at this point. But yeah, no, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens because you got to think they're all going to retire pretty close to each other.
Probably.
And so it's going to be a wave of. And what I heard was funny. What's his name? Billy Donovan. So Billy Donovan essentially turned down IU. He didn't turn down IU. He just never said yes. He just when they
just
called
couldn't
him
find a house when he was in town, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, but they contacted him through back channels, and he was just kind of like, he didn't say no. He just didn't actively pursue it, and they went after him, all through back channels, and he just never said yes. And then Louisville came calling, and he figured they were going to be on probation for forever. And the plan had always been he was probably going to take over for Rick Pitino at Louisville when Rick Pitino retired. But he just decided, no, he wanted to stay in the NBA. Those were the two openings that he was really looking for. Unless he goes back to Florida, I don't know where he's going to go when he comes back. Because I don't think he wants to follow any of these other guys. I mean, following Pitino at Louisville would have been following a mentor. Going to IU kind of would have been blazing his own path. He's not going to want to go to Duke. He's not going to want to go to North Carolina or Michigan State or one of these other schools. I'm really curious to see what happens there if he comes back. He may just not come back. He may just try and stay in the NBA. I don't know.
He's done well enough. He would get another head job, wouldn't he? If he
yeah, but nowhere great. He's not going to get the Lakers job or the Knicks job or anything like that. He's going to have to go to Charlotte or wherever.
Is the Knicks job a good one now?
Well, no, but it's a big one, and there's money there, and it is New York, so you can lure guys. There's a lot of people who think Kevin Durant's going to the Knicks. A lot of people I talk to think Kevin Durant's going to the Knicks. I don't, but that'd be fun to watch. Porzingis and Durant.
Holy smokes!
2 7-foot guards. Yeah, essentially. But yeah, no, I don't know. We'll see. Certainly that's a place that he could go, but hold on, I'm getting a phone call.
Ooh.
It's my mom.
Oh, put her on.
Humble brag.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, what's up?
Hey, we are just turning on to Nobel from the Unified.
You want me just to come down and meet you?
Yeah, circle.
Cool.
This is super compelling. Huh?
Bye. My mom is like super into bobbleheads right now. So hold on. My mom is dropping off Christmas presents for the radio people that I'm going to go by and see tomorrow. So I got to go down and snag those. Have a good night, everybody.
What are there other Christmas presents for the post-game show people?
You guys don't live here, so no.
Fair enough.
It's food. It's food. You don't want it.
Our present is your presents, right?
Exactly.
Isn't that?
She birthed me into this world so that I could show up on
But
it.
no, if it's food, I want it. I've heard the legend of your mom's cooking.
It's food that would be bad by the time it got to you. Jerod.
Still probably be better than most of the rest of what we could get.
It's a chance Jared's willing to take.
Yeah.
Fair.
It's a chance I'm willing to take.
All right, guys.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Later.
Okay. See you guys tomorrow night.
All right. Thanks, everybody.